Hey guys, welcome to the very first episode of Retro Byte, a little show where I'm going to remind you about those old tech gems that once graced our consumer shop shelves. So strap in, because today I'm taking you back to 1998, where an 8-year-old me was super excited to open the box of the Game Boy printer. The Game Boy printer was released in 1998, which is actually really late in the Game Boy cycle. To give it some perspective, the Game Boy Color was released later that year. The printer was known for its tiny little black and white printouts with sticky backs, so you could use them as stickers if you really wanted to, and they generally resembled a normal receipt. Actually, the printer was thermal based, so it used the same technology as a receipt machine, so it's no wonder it looked quite similar. However, the main thing I remember about this beast was the battery consumption. Assuming you could get your parents to shut out for 6 AA's, then you were golden. However, if you were still unlucky enough to be running on the original Game Boy back then that's an extra 4 AA's, so in total you're looking at 10 AA's to get this running. Why this thing never shipped with a power adapter is really beyond me. But let's face it, the printer was nothing without the almighty Game Boy camera. Now don't get me wrong, this thing deserves a video in its own right, but if you owned a printer you definitely had the Game Boy camera. This thing was probably one of the first front-facing orientated cameras ever made, predecessing the selfie by literally 10 years, and it was absolutely stuffed with fun camera tricks, panoramas, editing tools, stamps, and even a collection of games built in. The camera was a strange system too. It wasn't afraid to take risks with the software and how it worked. There was secret menus, strange credit scenes, hidden games, funny messages, great music, and even surreal images. This little beauty had loads built into it, and it showed off Nintendo's more weird and creative side. Now, there's no doubt the printer was built for the Game Boy camera, however it did work with quite a few other titles, and one I remember fondly was The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening DX, where a little mouse was added to the game who came and took pictures of Link on his adventure, which you could then print out. Pokemon Gold and Silver was another one which let you print out your Pokemon stats, and even print a diploma if you were dedicated to catch them all, of course. Unfortunately, I think my printer has seen much better days. It seems to only print in lines, and I think being covered in dust for a good few years hasn't done it any good, which is a real shame. I was excited to tweet a few good pictures for you guys, but I just don't think it's going to happen. If anyone knows a fix for this, then I'd love to know, but as far as I can tell, it's kind of bust. It also doesn't help that Nintendo stopped production of the printer paper in the early 2000s. However, you can use thermal paper from a normal office shop or eBay, which works just as well. But bear in mind you'll have to get exactly the same size roll, or use a hacksaw like I did to cut a roll down to size, which works well as long as you're right on the money with the sizing. I think the reason the Game Boy printer stuck in my mind is because it's a sort of gadget that wouldn't exist right now. Sure, there are small printers for your mobile phone, but there's no printing services for your 3DS or your PS Vita. It was purely a product of its time for a generation that was consumed by Game Boy, and when taking risks with accessories was still a viable option. I think that's the reason I never sold it on. It was such an amazing piece of tech for me back then that it never once crossed my mind to get rid of it. So that concludes the look back at the Game Boy printer. If you have any good images or printouts, then I'd love to see them, so do tweet me at Byte Review. And if you enjoyed this episode, then pop us a thumbs up and I'll get to work on another one. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.